welcome to our mouth-watering episode of Delici Different. Today we're going to be talking and featuring South African cuisine, especially this beautiful Indian concoction or Indian version, which is called bunny chow. And today in our show we are featuring the most wonderful lady that I have met. She is exuberant, and she is, well, I'll let her speak for herself, and her name is Nasima Mustafa. So thank you, stay right in. Hi Nasima.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you,
Walaikum
Ikra?
salam.
Thank you so much for doing this today.
You're welcome. Thank you. You are an amazing person, and I'd love to know more about how you keep yourself so radiant, so active, and so filled with energy to give to the community with all that you have done. Please do share.
Well, I suppose I'll start by saying that today I'm going to feature South African Indian cuisine, and that's because that's my heritage. So I'm South African born, third generation on my dad's side, and Indian by heritage. So I'll talk just a little bit about our history of migration and how we ended up coming to Australia. So we basically in 1860 is when the very first ships came from India to South Africa, and they brought these indentured laborers. The British told the people that if they worked for a period of 5 years on their sugarcane plantations, that they would give them a block of land. But the British never kept that promise. And so essentially the Indians were brought as slaves to South Africa to work. And it was through that same process that my grandparents came. So on my dad's side, it was in 1890 that my dad's side of the family first came to South Africa. And my grandfather in 1901, as a child who was only 6 years old, came to South Africa with his older brother who was only 8 years old. And on Mum's side of the family, it was in 1918 that they moved to Durban, and under the same sort of thing, but as traders rather than indentured laborers. Yeah.
Wow, that is an amazing history. It reminds me of my own Fiji Indian
Yes,
indentured
correct.
labor. Yeah, so very similar history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when did you arrive to Australia, or were you born here?
No, I was actually born in South Africa in 1970 during the height of apartheid. And my dad is a medical doctor, and it was very difficult to practice medicine then because there were restrictions on who you could treat, which race you could treat, etc. And he didn't feel that he could apply his Hippocratic oath correctly as a doctor. And so he applied for migration and to Canada and Australia, and decided whoever took him first is where we would come. And Australia accepted us first, and Mum has had 3 uncles here at the time in Sydney. So that's why we migrated here in 1977. So I was 7 years old then, started grade 2 at Cooperoo State School, and then went to Ascot State School for my primary school, and then went to St. Margaret's Anglican School for my high school.
Nice.
Yeah.
You've had a long journey, haven't you?
It was a long journey, and coming to Brisbane in particular in the 70s was not an easy thing. It was only 3 years after the White Australia policy was abolished. So essentially we came out of apartheid South Africa into a very apartheid Queensland. And faced a lot of issues as a child here, and really hated growing up here.
Wow.
Because the bullying was terrible. There was no awareness of cultural diversity or religious diversity. It was incredibly difficult to be accepted. In fact, I didn't even attempt to be accepted. I was a very socially isolated child who constantly asked my parents why they brought me to this wretched country to grow up in. But yeah, things have changed. Like all my children have grown up. I have an adult son, and my other 2 kids are still in the school system. And I'm happy to say that in the 40 years that I've been here, on and off, that a lot has changed in the education system, and cultural diversity is definitely something that's been embraced.
Yes, and I know from following your Facebook Nasima is an avid Facebooker.
Yes.
You know, it reminds me of that saying, you know, have fingers will type, have feet will travel. I mean, that's you, Nasima.
Yes.
An avid traveler, reader, blogger,
Yes.
Facebooker, and you really speak your mind and you stand up for justice and equality. And I love that about you. And now this show itself, the project, you know, Delici Different, it's all about, you know, community cooking, cultural diversity. Tell us more about your passion for this cultural diversity.
Sure. I suppose it really starts with the way I've been raised. You know, we moved to Brisbane when we were the only South African family at the time. We were probably one of very few, you know, maybe 5 or 6 Indian heritage families who were here. And we lived on the north side, so we were pretty much socially isolated. And my parents made a tremendous effort to mix with other people of multicultural backgrounds and other Muslims as well. So we do this 40-minute drive every Sunday from the north side to the Holland Park Mosque, all through the 70s and the 80s, just to attend madrasa, which is Islamic education, on a Sunday. And Dad, you know, founded one of the mosques in Lutwyche on the north side. He's a founder.
That's my mosque.
Yes, there you go. So he was a founder, and Mum and Dad have been very active in community. So I've been raised with the community spirit, and we've always had friends who are of every ethnic background, and not necessarily just Muslim. So I think my philosophy definitely comes from the way I've been raised.
MashaAllah. Yeah. Hats off to your parents.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I believe you have a very supportive husband
Yes.
who actually shares your passion.
Correct.
Tell us a bit more about your wonderful marriage.
Absolutely. So my husband is Mohammed Ba, and Mohammed is from Sierra Leone. He's here for the camera when it's ready. And Mohammed's from Sierra Leone, and Mohammed arrived into Australia on a refugee visa. And we met doing some social work together because I'm a social worker as well. So that's how we connected, basically just, you know, common interest. And we both have a passion for people, for culture, for travel. So we do share a lot in common.
Yes, wonderful. Now tell us about the dish that you will be preparing today.
Excellent. So I've given you a little bit of the history of South Africa and how Indians actually got to South Africa. So when the Indians, the majority of them entered through the port of Durban, which is our second largest city. And I say our because although I've lived in Australia for 40 years, if you ask me where I'm from, I'm always South African. I have a very strong affiliation with my South African identity and with my Indian identity as well.
Yes.
Only if you ask me what citizenship do I hold, then well, I say I'm actually Australian by citizenship and South African. I've got dual citizenship. So when the Indians came through to Durban, so they wanted to, you know, experience their own food, and they did bring their own spices and things with them. But there was a shortage of wheat to make chapati, roti, paratha, whatever you want to call it. And so they found that when they had their curry or they had their leftovers, they didn't have the roti that they were used to eating with it. So what they sell in South Africa is, you know, your regular loaves of bread.
Yeah.
So in South Africa, they cut that in half and they sell it in halves to the African people, and they call it half loaf.
Oh yes.
And
Okay.
and traditionally it's actually a wholemeal flour. Right. So half loaf, very, very common in South Africa until now. The African person for breakfast will have half loaf with butter and a cup of black coffee. And that's like a staple breakfast. So this is how the Indians then adopted. They said, okay, well, this will work for us. So essentially what you do is you cut the full loaf in half, you scoop out the center of it, you fill that up with a curry, and then you use the top of it, you know, the filling, to actually eat away at the curry with your pickles and whatever else. So I'm going to do that for you. And I'm going to do just the very average looking loaf of bread, and then I've got a cob loaf as well for something just a little bit fancy, like if, you know, it's a lovely thing to actually serve if you have a dinner party. And 2 people can share a cob, which is lovely if you're getting couples over. So I thought I'd do the cob version as well. So I'll quickly go through and explain a little bit here. I'm very fortunate to be able to use my parents' home for this particular session. My dad is an avid gardener, and he grows all these things. So
this is fresh from the garden.
this is fresh from the garden.
Oh, mashallah.
Yes.
I'm just gonna smell this. Fresh coriander. There's nothing like fresh,
Fresh
coriander.
coriander.
Mashallah.
So we've got here curry leaves, which, you know, as soon as you rub it, it releases this incredible aroma.
Yeah, we can't cook without
No.
curry leaves, can we?
Not possible.
No.
So we've got the coriander. These are the different types of chilies that Dad grows in his garden. As you can see, some of them are really short. Some of them are long and skinny.
I like this one.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah.
They're very ornamental. And then they've got mint, and these are limes. There's a lime tree as well.
That's also from the garden?
Yeah, look, I brought the leaves in to prove it.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah.
And Dad grows so many chilies, and when they turn red, he dries them, and then Mum makes masala, and I'll show you the masala a bit later.
You can do so much. It's such a variety, isn't
Yes, it's beautiful. It's
Sustainable
lovely that
living.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love it. I love it.
Yeah. They do grow a few other things like the madambi leaves, you know, the pattas and things like that.
Nice.
Probably a little tour into his garden wouldn't be a bad
Yes,
idea if we had time.
I reckon, yes.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with just showing you what all these different ingredients are. So I've got here chicken thigh meat, which has been diced. And I normally get my chicken from ABD Poultry, who very often support me whenever I do fundraising initiatives. So I'm very happy to support them.
Yeah.
And I've got diced potato. I've got a combination of green and red capsicum or peppers, whatever you call it. And here I've got diced onions.
Onion, yeah.
And then here, you'll know this,
Oh,
Ikra.
the waft of it.
This is our masala dabba.
Masala dabba, yes.
So for those who are not Indian, it's a container with these little compartments, and everything that goes into your generic curry is all here. Very, very handy. So we've got turmeric, we've got ground coriander, ground cumin, whole cloves, whole cinnamon sticks, red chili, and salt.
Yes.
And in here, I have got a wet masala. So these are all the dry spices or masala. And this is the wet masala. So in here, we've got those lovely red chilies that have been ground up. And we've got ginger and garlic all mixed in here. And this is a special family tradition that we do. And I'm sure a lot of Indians do this. Instead of, you know, manually grinding everything fresh every day, we make a bulk lot of this, which lasts the whole year.
Yeah.
And just use it straight out of there. So just remembering that that has got ginger, garlic, and fresh red chili.
Oh, nice.
And then I've got just my canned tomato. I use diced tomato, but if fresh tomatoes are in season, use fresh tomato. They're just a bit expensive now, so we're going with this option.
Yes.
All right, so we can maybe start cooking as soon as we're ready.
Yes. Can I just compliment your tablecloth once again?
Sure.
It's beautiful. It
You're
just goes with your whole vibe of being colourful all the time.
So I'm using, I'm starting by using an AMC pot, which is a very South African thing to do, right? This is almost like the South African signature for Indian women especially. So it's beautiful quality stainless steel pots, which you can only buy in South Africa, I think, I'm not sure if you can actually get them here now.
No.
But anyway, this is one of those things that, you know, women invest thousands of dollars into and use it for a lifetime, pass it down to their girls. That's the sort of thing. So,
This one is what?
how old is this one, Mom?
30 years old.
30 years old. You can see it's,
Oh, wow.
you can see it's missing the handle there because we haven't been able to go back to South Africa and exchange it.
Such a great quality,
But
and
it's
the depth of
fantastic.
it too.
Yeah.
It's so suitable for curries.
Yeah, and it's a thick enamel base, which is fantastic.
And I think the beauty about it is that if you're going for a picnic or anything, you can just, you know, carry it so
Exactly.
efficiently as
Yeah,
well.
and it retains the heat, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And you can put it on the table and serve straight on the
Correct.
Yes,
That's
yes,
it.
mashallah.
Ikra, I'm going to ask you, darling, to pass me the things
Absolutely.
as we go along.
I'll
so,
be the kitchen hand.
awesome. So
Yes.
I'll get the the onions first.
The onions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
There you are.
So, as I mentioned, I've just diced onions. So, I'm making quite a large quantity because I'm going to feed my whole family. And bunny chow is such a popular thing, everybody wants to have. So, I'm actually going to use 2 kilos of chicken thigh fillet, which is diced today. So, I've used 3 whole onions.
And is
I've
that
diced
oil
them.
that you've got there already?
Yes, I have a little bit of oil just to sweat off the onions first. And something that I always do when I'm cooking is I add the salt at this stage because I find that the salt helps the onion sweat and helps it to get brown faster. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm not a very patient person. So I'm doing 2 teaspoons of salt, so a teaspoon per kilo.
Wow, I wish you could smell this. MashaAllah, it's amazing.
Amazing, right?
That's all homemade.
And I'm going to put in there a few sticks of cinnamon. Right, so that's whole cinnamon sticks. And about 5 or 6 cloves of whole cloves. Here we go.
Nice.
Don't count.
Yes.
I don't count, I just go by measurement and experience. So my cooking journey started when I was 12 years old.
Nice.
My mum broke her leg and had invited guests for dinner. And my dad, being who he is, refused to cancel the arrangement and said, let Nasima cook, right? So mum sat with her cast on and said, okay, do this, show it to me, do that, show it to me, do that. And this is how I learned to cook.
Oh, nice.
But I didn't know until then that I actually had a flair for it or that I'd love it.
Yeah.
And that really just awoken this incredible passion.
Yeah.
So that's basically where my cooking journey started.
What about right now, Nasima? I heard you say before that you were a social worker and you're also quite an avid traveler. So how do you combine that and what is your aspiration in terms of, your professional aspirations?
Okay, so basically the social work thing is really a hobby. That I studied a little bit of social work and then I dropped out of studying and then I just started working in social work. And I've developed myself by, through vocational training and working as a social worker, mostly with refugee settlement. The reason I got into it is I was really craving being back home in South Africa and having those African people around me and having my people around me. And I found that the way I could do that was by connecting with migrant communities and refugee communities.
Right.
And that's what pulled me into it, because I found my sense of belonging with the refugee communities.
Oh, wow.
And that's still what I do. That is still where I find my sense of belonging up until now. So then I got involved with the Queensland African Communities Council, volunteering for them, and I'm a member with them. And that really allowed me to, tap into this beautiful community of African people that really made me feel at home. And I've been so warmly embraced by them. So it's really given me so much to live for. And I really started enjoying living in Brisbane after connecting with the community.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice. And
yeah.
Australia is highly diverse and,
Yes.
and multicultural. What do you personally feel about the way things are going right now and how it's progressing? And what do you want to see change?
Well, for a long time it was improving and it was really getting better and whatever. And then with all the terrorism in the world and all the global events and whatever, and there's a lot of fear-mongering coming from our government, and the media isn't doing any favors in harmonizing people. So I'm very disappointed with the direction that Australia's gone and going, and I just see it deteriorating daily, which is incredibly frustrating for me, because after living here 40 years on and off, I would have thought it's in a much better place, but it's not. I see it really going backward. And so one of the initiatives, and the thing that drives me is trying to combat the negativity that the media is doing, and this is one of those things, to show that, we've got so much commonality, and to
Like
have
cooking.
Exactly, and food and the love of culture and the love of community. And there's so much more that we have in common than we have differences. And that's the whole idea of this project, the Delici Different project. And so in 10 years' time, I would really like to see the government participating more in being more proactive about bringing people together instead of promoting and propagating fear. And I'd like to see the media also jumping on board and highlighting things like this instead of, one silly person's opinion about how different we are and how we should be radicalized and all that sort of nonsense, which I certainly don't buy into. Yeah. So that's where I'd like to see this country go. And especially for my children and my grandchildren, I would love for them to feel more of a sense of belonging than what I have ever felt here, because I certainly have not felt a sense of belonging.
Did you just say grandchildren?
Yes.
So you have grandchildren?
Yes.
Mashallah, it must be all the fresh food cooking.
I don't know
the
what it is.
radiance,
Ask my
mashallah.
son.
Yes. So tell me more about your family, your children, your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Mashallah, tell me more.
Sure. So I have 3 sons. Hasib is 26, Taha is 14, and Tassin is 9. And I've been blessed with boys only. And Hasib is married and he's got 2 children, Musa and Harun, 4 and 2 years old.
Wow, Nasib.
And my daughter-in-law Ruqayya is from Zimbabwe.
Oh, mashallah,
Yeah.
mashallah. So very multicultural.
Very,
family.
very, yes, because my brother's one's married to a Norwegian Pakistani, the other one's married to a Lebanese woman, and my sister's married to a South African Indian. So when we get together, very much United Nations.
Yes.
My husband's from Sierra Leone, my children are half Palestinian and Syrian.
Oh, wow.
So we're really diverse.
So is it like a loud gathering?
Oh yeah, like a fish market. Well, I can only handle like half an hour at a time.
And so when all these women, when they cook their own native food,
Yes.
it must be quite
Oh,
a
it's
variety on
beautiful.
the table.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mashallah.
It's very lovely. Like we've got our favorites, you know, like we'll say to Hiba to make hummus or tabbouleh or whatever her, you know, her specialty is. She
Yeah.
makes beautiful food, Lebanese food. And Rehana makes her Pakistani things as well. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful, yeah.
Wow, so you've got Delici different going on in your own
In our
family.
home. And of course my mum and dad are here as well. So that's lovely. So we've got 3 generations here with my grandchildren.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I can smell the onions.
Absolutely.
Show us what's happening, what's going
So
on.
I'm waiting for these to brown up a little bit. They're sweating down nicely. As I said, the salt really allows it to sweat faster. And they haven't turned golden yet, so just a few more minutes. So it's a good thing you're talking to me while we wait for this.
Isn't it? It's a wonderful sign that we wait for. I remember when I was a kid and Mum taught us how to cook. It's always that sign, you know, wait for the onions to be golden. You can't progress unless the onions are golden. Yes.
Exactly.
The golden brown of onions.
So I've learnt a little bit from our Fijian Indian friends who live here as well.
Right.
And I've also done a lot of cooking courses in Thailand, about
Ooh.
6 different cooking courses in the various parts of Thailand. So I've learned to, my method of cooking is not really the way my mum taught me traditionally. I've tweaked it a little bit. I've learned to sort of make it a little faster.
Right.
And that's probably by using a little bit of the Thai method.
Right.
So instead of waiting for it to go completely golden, when it starts softening, which it is ready for right now, I will actually put in all my spices.
Okay.
So in Thai cooking, they make a paste and they use the paste, which is dry plus wet mix.
Right. Right.
We've got ours, which are separate.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put both the dry and the wet in at this stage.
Right.
And I actually let it braise together because it quickens the process for me.
Right.
So I'm going in with the equivalent of 2 full teaspoons of dried coriander. And the same with my cumin, 2 teaspoons of cumin. Now Mum buys these whole and then she washes it and she toasts it in the oven and then she grinds it.
Oh wow.
So this is not store-bought instant powder.
So this is right from scratch.
Yes. And then I'm going in with the heaped teaspoon of turmeric, which we call haldi.
Haldi, yes.
And
It's grown in popularity now in the Western world with all these healing effects
Correct.
of turmeric with the anti-inflammation of joints, etc.
correct, it's got amazing Ayurvedic properties.
And we've been doing it for centuries now.
Yes. So this is the chili powder. So I like using a combination of rough dried red chili and fine dried red chili. I find it gives a different flavor, probably because the rough one's a little more smoky, and then and I like the texture that comes from it as well. So we keep our masala dabba closed at all times, so we don't allow those lovely flavors to escape.
Yes.
And I'll get the wet masala, please. Thank you. So just a reminder again, this wet masala has got, so it's fresh red chili, ginger and garlic.
So fresh red chilies from your mum's garden.
Yes, ginger and garlic. So for every kilo of meat, it's 1 teaspoon heat of this. So basically I'm going to put in the equivalent of 2 heat teaspoons. And if you like it hotter, you can use more, and if you like it not so hot, you can use less. So I'm just going to give that all a mix, and I'm going to turn the heat down really, really low so that it can braise slowly, and I'll explain the reason for braising this. I'm just getting about a tablespoon of water in there. and I'm mixing
Infuse
it up.
it with the onions.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm mixing that all up, and can you see that? Yep.
Oh
So-
wow, that looks amazing.
So the reason for putting a little bit of water is so that you don't burn that spice when it goes in. And this is what I learned from Thai cooking.
Oh, they do that.
Well, the whole concept of putting in a wet paste and then letting it braise, I find is really sort of speeds up your cooking, especially, you know, when you've worked all day, or like me, I'm at uni all day.
Yeah.
And then I come home and I've got exactly an hour to cook before the kids are hungry, or I'm hungry, or hubby's hungry. And then, and I don't have much patience, as I said, so I give myself 1 hour in the kitchen. And this kind of makes it happen for me. So after I've stirred it all through, I just cover it for a few minutes. And that allows it to braise really quickly.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the oil to basically separate, and the oil comes to the surface a little bit. And you can you smell those aromas
Yeah.
coming out?
Yes, I can.
This braising process actually brings out the flavor and the taste of those spices.
Nice.
So if you don't braise it, you end up eating kind of like a raw masala,
Raw masala, and
which doesn't taste good on the
No.
palate. But by doing this, you're not only enhancing and infusing those flavors together, but you're actually allowing that masala to cook.
Yeah.
So you get a much more mellow flavor going through your food.
Yeah. What are you studying?
Oh, so I've graduated in November in my undergrad in international tourism and hotel management. And I got a place to do my master's. So I start my master's in a few weeks, inshallah. Master's in international tourism and hospitality management. And I will be doing my dissertation or my thesis on indigenous tourism. So
Oh, wow.
I'm very interested in sustainable tourism
Yeah.
and indigenous tourism. And I think living in Australia, I think the one thing that is lacking is an appreciation of indigenous culture.
Yeah.
There's a lack of understanding of the history of indigenous people, but there's also a lack of understanding of their culture and their people and what their needs are. And I think that a lot of that has got to do with the whole colonialism mindset, which government still maintains until today. Sort of telling them what to do instead of asking and consulting, and
Yes.
you know, what it is that they want to do and what it is
Respecting.
that they need. And
Yes.
exactly. The consultation process is not there.
Yes.
So I'm very keen to develop tourism, but in particular using tourism as a vehicle to drive sort of community development within their communities. So, for example, Stradbroke Island is just not too far from Brisbane, and it's a beautiful destination. It's a beautiful ecological, ecotourism destination. And the traditional owners of the land do actually manage the campsite there. So basically to find out how tourism can be developed and enhanced for them so that their community can benefit from it. So
Yes.
whether it's cottage industry or whether it's enhancing education or healthcare,
Yeah.
wanting to see how that can be more sustainable for them
Right.
and what can be done to, to uplift their communities.
Yeah.
Because essentially I live daily with a factor of guilt as an economic migrant to this country. I feel that my parents came to this country and we have benefit as a family tremendously from being here. And I benefit tremendously through educating myself in this country. But we don't know very much about the indigenous people.
Yes.
And this is essentially their country.
Yes.
And we've come, first of all, without their permission.
Yes.
And we've come and lived here, and many of us have exploited this situation. Many of us have benefit. Many of us are giving back, which is great. But I really believe that we need to educate ourselves more and integrate more with their communities and see how together we can uplift their communities. Because it shouldn't be a them and us situation, which I
Yes.
find is very much what's happening. You have your multi-generation Anglo-Saxon Australians, then you have your migrants, then you have your refugees, and then you have your indigenous. We're almost like pigeonholed.
Yes.
And I don't like that.
No.
I really think there's got to be a lot of crossing and bridge building going on, and we all need to get together to see how we can make things better for refugee communities and asylum seekers, and at the same time see how we can make things better for indigenous people.
We need to clone you. We need to clone. We need more Nasima in Australia.
I think there are plenty. I think they're not as vocal as I am.
Yes, that's what I mean. We need to have more words spoken that will change what's going
Yeah.
on, you know.
And I think also, you know, I give thanks to being raised in Australia for being so vocal, because if I had come from South Africa and, you know, where we were always oppressed and were not allowed to voice your opinion and you didn't have freedom of speech under apartheid and all those sorts of things, I certainly wouldn't be as outspoken as I am now. So I'm definitely a product of Australian society where I speak my mind. And I feel safe speaking my mind because this is a democracy and we have freedom of speech. So I take full advantage of that.
Why not?
And you know, if it's anything to do with social justice or from a humanitarian focus, I will say what I need to say.
Good on you. More power to you, girl. More power.
Thanks,
to you.
honey. So let's see how this is going. Yeah, this is going quite
So what
well.
sort of heat are you using?
See,
Medium? Or?
I actually had it on low, and I'm going to yank it up a little bit so that we're not here all day. So I'll just put up to medium, but if the camera comes in close, you'll notice how the oil is starting to come to the surface. And this is really what we want.
Yeah.
So we want and if I move it around, you can see the oil very clearly. So it's not a huge amount of oil that I've put in there. Maybe two tablespoons,
Yeah.
maybe 3 for this quantity. But the idea is that you've got to be able to smell those scents coming through really strong.
Which I can. Mashallah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give that another couple of minutes. Because like I said, and the secret to Thai cooking too, is if you don't do this braising part properly, you ruin your dish.
Right.
So a few more minutes for that, and then we'll go in with the chicken.
With the chicken. Okay.
So I'll just show you how we make this masala. So my mum makes a few of these buckets every year, and that's what it looks like. And I'm going to be selling this. So if anyone's interested in purchasing this, it's a really easy way to do authentic Indian cooking. So it's got the ginger, garlic, and chili combination in here.
And it smells awesome.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And the color, look at that. Isn't
Yeah.
that incredible?
It is beautiful.
Beautiful color. And really, if you ask me, I think that's the secret to a good curry, is this base here. And of course, all your home toasted and home ground ingredients, you know?
Got the chicken here for you.
Righto, honey, this is ready to go. So we'll go in with this chicken. So I've bought the chicken, I had my butcher dice it, and I've washed it and drained it. So the size of the dice is like that.
Curry pieces. We call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And so that's 2 kilos in there. Bismillah. Say Bismillah, which means I begin in the name of Allah.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
And I'll just give this a really good mix.
Hence the size of the pot and the design of the pot.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's very practical.
This is my favorite one because I actually don't know how to do cooking for 2 people. Because
Well,
when
I don't think many Indian ladies would
Yeah.
know really, because we cook for so many people.
Precisely, and when Mum taught me, we were a family of 6. So Mum taught me how to cook for a family of 6, and I just don't know how to downsize. I know how to upsize.
Yeah, so we know how to upsize. And it's also a very inherent quality where we cook enough for even unexpected
Oh, yes.
guests. There's
Correct.
always food, and we see barakah in that, don't we? There's
Correct.
barakah in cooking for more.
That's right. So what's barakah?
Well, you know, making something small go for longer.
Correct.
Or, you know, sustain itself for
Exactly
longer.
right.
Yeah.
Precisely. Thanks. So I'm not going to use all of this because this is enough to make lots of condiments. But I'm going to put in 2 whole red chilies, and that's going to give a bit of a smoky flavor. And it's also for extra heat for those who like extra heat. And then I'm going to use probably 4 sprigs of this curry leaf. And I like using the tender little ones here, because then you can chew them and you can actually digest them, whereas the larger, tough ones you can't really.
Yeah.
I might go with one more actually.
They smell divine.
Aren't they beautiful?
Oh yes, they smell divine.
That really puts the Indian in curry, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
So I've been waiting 10 minutes for this to braise, and as you can see, a lot of the water, the liquid has been released from the chicken, and there's already a really lovely rich gravy in there, and the smell is amazing. How does it smell? Good? Yeah, fantastic. So at this stage, I'm going to put in probably two cans of diced tomato.
Oh, sorry, I opened.
No, it's fine. I wasn't sure how much I'd need, so yeah, 2 cans of diced tomato at this stage, and or maybe 2.5. And really, just by your own experience, as to how much you need, because I like quite a lot of gravy to soak up the bread. And then I'm putting the potatoes in at this stage. So these are all diced potatoes.
Such perfect cubes they are.
Really?
Yes.
And again, your capsicum or peppers, whatever you call them. And this is really just to give a beautiful flavor, but also the color is incredible. Oops. Give that a good mix, and now I'm just going to leave that on medium to high heat to cook until the potatoes are cooked through, the chicken will be cooked through, and it'll all thicken up. So we'll come back in about 15 or 20 minutes.
All right, well, we're just waiting 20 minutes now, approximately 20 minutes for Nasima's beautiful dish. What is it called again? I forget.
Bunny chow.
Bunny chow, yes. I can smell it. I just can't wait to get my, taste buds rolling now. So while we wait, we're going to have a little chat with Nasima and with Brother Mohammed, her husband, to, get to know a little bit more about their journey together, because it's a beautiful journey, and I would like to know more about it. In fact, before we start, I am drawn to your jewelry. I'm drawn to how you dress always. It's always a fusion of Africa, India. There's this Aboriginal. There's such fusion going on with your attire always. Tell me more.
It's who I am. I'm a fruit salad. I'm a mixture of cultures. I'm a mixture of ethnicity, of identity. I'm very Australian in the way I think, but I'm very Indian in the way I eat, and I'm very African by heart and soul. So it just represents who I am, and I'm loud and boisterous, so the colour's got to go with it.
Colourful.
Yeah.
And I see brother's shirt is very Indian, Moroccan.
Yeah.
Who does the buying of couture in this house? Is it her getting you things?
Well,
or
yeah, she gets this stuff. She knows what rhymes. She's got a very good eye for design stuff.
for the designs, yeah, that's why she picked you.
Yeah.
That's exactly
That's why
right.
she picked you, and
That's
now we
right.
come to you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your journey, because whatever I've read from your avid Facebooking life, you have a lot of beautiful life behind you. Please
Yeah.
do share.
Yeah, certainly. Well, from Sierra Leone. Originally, I was born in Sierra Leone. I grew up in Sierra Leone. But over the years, I've traveled a few other countries for different reasons, including war, parents having jobs here and there. So so basically, I've done a few countries in West Africa itself, and it's a very diverse communities. I've traveled, every country has its own culture, its own way of life and everything. So I've been very blessed to travel to these places and learn their way of life,
Yeah.
It's helped diversify my experience myself. So yeah, my family, I'm from a very large family as well. As you know, African families, they don't know when to stop, but
Are they all here, based in Australia?
no, I'm only here with 3 siblings, a brother and 2 sisters, but the rest of them, 14 of them, are still back home. Parents still back home. So yeah, I do travel there every now and then whenever I can. It's a very far place to go. It's a long journey, very expensive as well. So I can only do a few times, whenever I can. Yeah, so I'm from a tribe called the Fulas. The Fulas are nomads by nature. My ancestors travel over Africa from, I don't actually know the origin of my tribe, but they go from place to place with cattle
Wow.
and they settle from place to place. So in most African countries, you will see the Fulas as natives of the land because they've been there for a long, long time. So that's where we get our whole, diverse culture as well. We as Fullers, and yeah, it's a very, very cultural tribe itself. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of The Gods Must Be Crazy, that movie, where they travel from place to place
Yes, yes.
with the bottle of Coke, the empty bottle, that is. When Nasima Facebooks and gives us messages about hope and diverse in culture and embracing people, embracing different colors, different ethnicities. One of the biggest messages that I get from Nasima's posts is, the enrichment of family values, the enrichment of marriage. And I see that, mashallah, I see that in your marriage. Tell me how you met, and tell me, what drew you both together in unison, the common passion that you share. Because I can see that there's this common passion you both have.
I'll leave that for Mohammed.
Yeah. Well, we both passionate about community work, social work. You see, ever since I was little, I've sort of in one way or the other I've done community work since the age of 12, 13. Fleeing my countries as a refugee. I was lucky I could speak French and English, so I was able to be a translator for the UN for refugees coming across the border to a French country. So ever since I've lived in refugee camps, and I've been able to help in a way that I can. So that was my first foot in terms of helping, working with communities. Ever since, I've always find a fulfillment in working with people, helping people whenever I can. So traveling to Australia after many years living in refugee camps and going through a lot of life difficulties, I've been lucky to come to Australia. It's a very beautiful country itself, and continue my social work, even though that's not my area of expertise in terms of career-wise, because I did engineering business at university and I've worked in different areas, but I'm very passionate in social work. So being at a social event, trying to do fundraiser for the Ebola victims in West Africa, Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
That's where I met my beautiful wife, Nasima, and she's been into it. She's done a lot before then, so that was just one of the things that she did. So that's the first time I met her, and ever since after then, I can't, it's always been there. Yeah.
It's no longer
It's
just
not-
Muhammad. It's
yeah,
the two of
it's
you
the two
as
of us.
one.
Yeah, and she's had a very, very unique experience herself, her life journey from our conversation, and so we do share a lot in common, and her desire to help people make a difference as well is very inspirational. I did learn a lot from that, regardless of everything I've had in my life as experience. I have learned a lot, a massive amount of things from her. So it has been very enriching for me myself.
Mashallah. Can I say a personal thank you to you as a man who actually values the strength in and empowerment in a woman.
Absolutely.
And mashallah, that really helps the woman flourish more.
100%.
When she has
Yeah.
that supporting husband behind her
Correct.
saying, babe, I know what you're doing is right for everyone. Not just for me, but for everyone.
Totally. Muhammad is
Alhamdulillah.
always such a strength of support, emotionally, physically, in every way. It's amazing. Like this morning, I wanted him to be here, and I said to him, please, can you come? I'd like you to be there. And never refuses. Always very, very supportive of anything that I want to do. And I really feel that with that support behind me, I don't think that there's anything that I can't achieve. By Allah's grace and with God's will, I know that anything that you would like to achieve is achievable when you've got the support behind you. That makes all the difference.
MashaAllah. Culturally, there can be obstacles when two people get married from different cultures.
Yeah.
was there anything in your marriage that was at all, there was an obstacle of any kind culturally?
I would think that yes, because Muhammad doesn't have children and I have all my children. So that's a bit, a bit of an issue in a lot of cultures. So I think that's probably the only thing that is really much of an issue, because the rest of it, Muhammad's very easy to please as far as cuisine is concerned, and he's very open-minded and embracing of people. So he's been very embracing of my culture and who I am as a person and my family, my children. And so Muhammad doesn't have much family here, but the family that he does have here have been very embracing of me and what I stand for and what I do. So we're very blessed that it's been a smooth transition for us. And I think because I have a very firm sense of my South African identity, this is really where we connect.
Right, the African
Correct.
background.
It's the African in me that connects with him.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
Because I honestly think that if I didn't have that element in my personality and my value system, and if I was just purely Australian raised, thinking only Australian and not having that sort of broader sort of community focus, which comes from both my Indian ethnicity and South Africa, but more so South Africa because I've lived there, where I haven't lived in India. But it's that African in me that really makes us connect, and we have those common values about things that are way beyond ourselves, and that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Any aspirations about starting an organization in Australia for African people or for refugees?
Oh, well, we've had a couple on the go. My mother back home, she started a women's called Women Empowerment for Self-Development. It consists of widows and orphans. So Nasima has been very proactive in terms of getting that up and going. Support fundraising and
What is it called?
we call it WESDA, West African Women Empowerment for Self-Development. That's the name of the organization.
Right.
And my mother is the president for it. So it's just helping the widows who've lost their husbands during the civil war, because we had 11 years of civil war in Sierra Leone, and a lot of children been left orphans. So helping to support these people is one thing that we do. And she initiated another program as well, called Hefi, yeah.
Humanity Embrace Foundation.
Yeah, so that includes a lot of aspects as well in terms of supporting the locals here in Australia, in our communities, doing blanket drives and doing fundraiser for other communities in South Africa and other stuff like that. So inshallah, it is something that we're hoping that we can both invest in and be able to support in ways that we can.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
inshallah.
and working with people within our local community as well to make things happen, because we're all people.
Yes.
Humans come first,
Yes.
and creating a better world for us is what we should strive at achieving.
Amen. Yes, yes.
Yeah, the world is a very complex place.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now I know, where to give credit to in terms of how well behaved you are and well spoken you are. Behind every well behaved man is this empowered mother.
Yes.
Even I've met your
Yes.
sons today, and mashallah, they're so well spoken and well behaved. That's because you have an empowered mother. Who
Correct.
really is so humane in her ways, and the product of that is wonderful men.
And much respect to Muhammad's mum, who's a very, very socially driven person. She holds a position within the Islamic community, like a women's Islamic committee, as well as WESDA. And the way that she's been able to empower the widows of the war is by using her own land, her own property, and subdividing it and giving plots to different families so that they can be self-sustainable.
Oh, wow.
So there's a very giving nature that she has, and a much, a broad vision that she has. Absolutely, Muhammad is definitely a product of, of her great character and quality.
I've just had this moment, this idea, and when ideas come, one must share it, otherwise they slip away. And my idea right now that's coming to me intuitively is that you need to take your camera crew and do a documentary on your mother and her efforts, her social efforts, and let it known to the world.
Correct.
Because the widows and children suffering because of this incessant war, and it's never ending.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
The suffering is never
and these
ending.
women need to be brought to light who are actually making a difference. You know,
Correct.
without women like your mother,
Yeah.
what would happen to all these widows and orphans? There's another Afghani woman who's doing something similar called Mahbooba's Promise. Yeah, very similar. So, you know, documentaries need to be made and featured to the rest of the world. That's an idea that just popped into my head.
That is a fabulous idea.
She lives in a country at the moment whose the government is 100% corrupt, so there's absolutely nothing going to the people, and so the poverty rate. This is a country that's got over 80% illiteracy rate because they've denied people education. You've got over 85% of population unemployed. You know, and so the suffering is it's there.
She's a warrior.
You know, so
She's
in
a
a place like that, to have people who can take the initiative and try to make a difference, it's credit to her. She's doing very good work. Yeah.
Great, mashallah. Thank you so much for your journey, for sharing with us, and thank you for being the man that you are, and for you know, really letting us in your lives today, both of you. Thank
Pleasure,
you.
absolute pleasure.
Praise to Allah.
Yeah, praise to Allah, exactly. I can smell the beautiful cooking already.
Yeah.
I really can.
I think we're ready for
I
lunch.
think we're ready for lunch. My stomach's rumbling. Where's our little, is it
Tassim.
Tassim, yes.
Our taster. So it's been 20 minutes now that this chicken has been cooking, and since I add the potato and the capsicum, and as you can see, it's cooked through beautifully. Everything's nice and tender. The potatoes are tender. There's a good amount of sauce there to soak up the bread. It's looking amazing. So I'm going to take this over to the table where I'll plate it. So what we've got here is what they call in South Africa, they call it half loaf. And normally it comes in wholemeal bread. So I'm just going to dig out the center here. Very simply, like that. So I just cut down the corners here, and it makes it a lot easier to lift out. Like that. And so that's what, you know, people eat every day. But if you want to do it a little bit fancy, if you're having couples over for a dinner party, you could get a cob loaf like that, and you just scoop out the center and leave the cap like that, and then you just fill it. So I'll show you how to do that. So let me start with this one. You put a good amount of filling in there. So remember that 2 people can eat from here, or even if it's a small family. Some coriander.
That now I would call that a Durban turban of curry.
Ah, Durban turban, I love that one. And so I've got some lime here and some mint, and this is mango pickle we call achar.
Was that homemade?
Mum made that,
Oh,
yes.
mashallah.
So that would be something really lovely to serve to your guests, something different. Now, did I tell you why it's called Bani Chow? I didn't. Did I?
Oh, no, you didn't.
Okay, so during apartheid, the derogatory term for Indians was bunny. Yep,
Why?
I don't know why.
What does that mean, except for
In
rabbits?
Indian, they used to refer to Indians as bunny. And chow in our colloquial South African dialect is food.
Yeah, we say that too.
So chow being food, so bunny chow, that's where you get it from. But of course, after apartheid, bunny stayed, the negative connotation attached to it disappeared. And we don't refer to Indians as bunny anymore. It's only this dish that's called bunny chow. And just like that, so when you eat it, basically, you break off a piece of bread, you get into it there, you get your potato and your chicken. That's good.